Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is North of Fair Conversations Without Barriers. I'm your host, Doug from Ontario, Canada. I hope everybody is enjoying their weekend. And today is officially fall time, summertime is done. But it's going to be a beautiful day out there today. And it's going to be, for the first day of fall, it's going to be summertime temperatures. Then, as the week progresses, it'll come back to seasonal temperatures for fall. Beautiful blue skies today, above normal temperatures. Get out there and enjoy it. Now I'm going to get into this. Cancel culture rebranded, how the right punishes truth while crying censorship. They say cancel culture is a left-wing weapon, that conservatives are being silenced for speaking truth. But look closer and you'll see the opposite. The same voices crying censorship are the ones demanding suspensions, firings, investigations. This isn't the end of cancel culture, it's a rebrand, and is being used to punish truth while protecting hate. In this episode, we'll dissect how far-right figures from Jordan Peterson to Amy Hamm, from mega lawmakers, they didn't dismantle cancel culture, they hijacked it. Jordan Peterson claimed Bill C-16 would criminalize misgendering, framed pushback as Marxist authoritarianism, built a media empire off the myth of being silenced, now monetized across YouTube, Daily Wire, and speaking tours. Peterson didn't get canceled, he got syndicated. Amy Hamm fined nearly $94,000 and suspended for anti-trans statements while identifying as a nurse. Claimed Jimmy Kimmel's satire was illegal. Became a rally point for Poilievre's free speech campaign. Her case is now being used to attack professional standards and diversity, equity, inclusion in healthcare. Hamm's framing isn't about legal, it's about ideology. And when conscience is punished, speech isn't free, it's filtered. Mega lawmakers, Trump's FCC, pressured ABC to suspend Kimmel. Tech platforms summons to hearings, not to stop hate, but to silence critics. Far-right figures applauded while dissenters are punished. Executive orders drafted to investigate ideological dissent under the guise of political violence. This isn't about protecting speech, it's about controlling the narrative. Who gets punished? Jimmy Kimmel, suspended for satire. South Park pulled from reruns. Over 30 people fired or investigated for criticizing Kirk, including a Secret Service agent. Teachers disciplined for quoting Kirk critically. Journalists pressured to retract or apologize for naming hate speech. The DOJ deleted a study showing far-right extremists committed 6 times more ideological murderers than far-left actors. Cancel culture didn't disappear. it changed hands. And now it's being used to protect far right idiocy and punish truth. Discord and Reddit, pressure to censor critics of Kirk. TikTok and Meta, flag LGBTQ creators while boosting far right outrage. Canadian Parliament applauds Kirk while ignoring the people punished for opposing him. UK media normalizes far right figures under the guise of balance. This isn't accountability, it's ideological enforcement, and the purge is happening in real time. Cancel culture isn't the problem. Because when people who cry censorship are the ones demanding silence, it's not about speech. It's about control. Accountability is not cancellation, it's consequence. Satire is not violence, it's resistance. Diversity, equity, inclusion is not extremism, it's repair. Anti fascism is not terrorism, it's survival. Now, I don't I don't condone violence. What happened to Kirk is tragic. No one should be shot. Period. Because violence solves nothing. Accountability is not cancellation, but ideological enforcement is. Satire is not violence, but silencing it is. DEI is not extremism, it's erasing it. Free speech isn't just about having a voice, it's about defending the voices they want erased. Ultimately, the moral of this: clarity is resistance. And in a culture where truth is punished and hate is platformed, defending conscience isn't radical, it's necessary. Now, Donald Trump recently said, he wants to, or he feels that, people shouldn't be allowed to criticize him. He said this recently on his trip back from the UK. But Donald Trump criticizes and mocks and name shames anybody he feels like it. But you can't criticize him. I think he wants to make it law that you can't do that because he's Donald Trump. I mean, here in Canada, I can criticize my government. I don't use hate speech. I don't threaten them. I call out their policies if I disagree with it. And when it comes to Jimmy Kimmel, or anybody else for that matter, he didn't say anything illegal. Now there's some articles floating around, whether they're true or not, that Disney is sitting down with Kimmel and potentially bringing them back on air. And if this is true, under what rules? What is he going to be allowed to say, and what is he not going to be allowed to say? Now, when like so, like myself, if I don't like something, I don't like something that people say, about a different culture, and I feel that it was, hate speech, then I should be able to call that out. I should be able to call that individual out. I don't have to. I don't have to. I don't have to like Kirk. I don't have to. I don't have to like, you know, uh, Jordan Peterson, Shapiro, Walsh. I don't have to agree to what they say. And should I be punished somehow for for uh, disliking of what they have to say? Jordan Peterson, diversity, equity, inclusion is compelled speech, undermines inclusion in education and healthcare. Shapiro, affirmative action is racial essentialism, rebrands equity as discrimination. Walsh, trans rights, fuels fuels bans, harassment, and moral panic. Kirk, DEI is anti-American, mobilizes youth against fairness and visibility. I don't have to agree to any of it. And how how it targets diversity, equity, and inclusion and punishes conscience. Donald Trump talked about an executive order on political violence and hate speech, targets ideological dissent, not actual violence. Antifa declared a major terrorist organization despite no legal mechanism or evidence. Amy Ham claims Jimmy Kimmel's satire was illegal despite being protected speech. Over 30 people fired or investigated for criticizing Kirk, including a Secret Service agent. This isn't about safety, it's about silencing resistance. Platforms were summoned to hearings, not to stop hate, but to suppress criticism. So I did a segment. I've done a segment on on free speech and where do we draw the line. speech that incites violence, hate speech, is illegal in Canada. And today, um, the Canadian government is adding to to the list to criminalize hate. And we've seen it here in Canada. People going around to synagogues, you know, setting fire to them, shooting at these places of worship. Quebec, province of Quebec, wants to stop praying in public. And more than likely, you're going to try to use the notwithstanding clause of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The notwithstanding clause is a part of the legislation in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms that the government, the provincial government, can take away those rights. I mean, it's bad enough in Quebec that the same government in Quebec is telling people that they can't wear their religious clothing if they work for the government. So they can't wear that scarf. They can't wear that hijab, I think what they're called. If you're a teacher, if you're working in any part of the government, they're not wearing something that is hate. But yet they're not allowed to. And I think he used the notwithstanding clause for that. But then they're telling people that you can't pray in public. I mean, that's just morally wrong. It's obvious to me that Quebec doesn't believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And people and people in government in Quebec and people have called them have called them out as being discriminatory, and he is being discriminatory. Quebec, it is a French province, but people also speak English in Quebec. Every business has to have their name, has to be in French, which is fine. I mean, I'm a French Canadian. I live in Ontario. There was another time when they said that the French people, in Quebec, and they must greet people in French. Well, not everybody speaks French. I visit the province, and I have not visiting when I was working. They even in the city of Montreal, and there's a lot of English people speaking in English law. They would um, start talking to me in French. And I say, I'm sorry, I don't speak French, and they obviously understand English, right? And they're okay with that. But when you start telling people because they're from a different culture that you can't pray in public, that is just wrong. When it comes to freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of thought, obviously there are boundary lines. But then when a government, you know, trying to tell you that what you said, what, like, for instance with Jimmy Kimmel, but you can't say that. I mean, look. I mean, look around to what people are saying. People who are in Donald Trump's orbit. Think about the speech that they use. And when we speak out about truth, and we call them out, we're the ones who are going to be censored. We're the radical left. I'm not sure how that works. I mean, they want a one-way street, and they want that street to be their way. Every one of us, we when we're speaking to one another, we have our opinions, and when those opinions are extremist, somehow we're not allowed to challenge that. And I've said from time and time before, I'm 100% about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I don't have to agree with far right ideology. I don't have to. And I can call it out, and I'm allowed to call it out. And these people, like Peterson and Walsh and Sapiro, I don't have to agree with them. This is why they have these debates, and they bring their ideology. They're crafty people, believe me. They're very crafty when they talk about um, the LGBTQ, or what is a woman. when they have these debates, people are chosen to debate them on certain topics. College kids, university kids who are studying. And when you're debating these people, they try to trap you. Because remember, they know it all. They know everything, and you don't. So, if you ever get an opportunity to debate these individuals, you got to do your homework very carefully. And you have to listen to the language they're using and how they're referencing everything. Because they always got that gotcha phrase in there. Now, why should people, I mean, if we, you know, when we call out the rhetoric, we get punished for it. I thought free speech is a time, to use rationale when we're debating somebody. We're not using language that is discriminatory. But to them, it's wrong. They take offense to being called out. They take offense to that. They think it's okay to be discriminatory. They think it's okay to have hate speech. Donald Trump says he shouldn't be criticized. That's a narcissist. If they're calling you out on what you say, you're not being, he, somehow he might even he thinks it's offensive or something. We're offending him if we call him out. But he calls people stupid. And many other things. But we can't. I mean, we're not turning around and calling them stupid. We're just turning around and calling it what it is. I mean, we can't criticize. Then we're being silenced. If you criticize Donald Trump, he'll want you investigated. sometimes, I'm at home doing something like that, and I'm thinking, what the hell? What direction are we going here? That people, you know, who use language that is pointed towards certain groups, and it's hateful, and then it's like I was saying, we call it out, and we're not allowed to do that. And if we disagree with somebody, you know, you know, like Jordan Peterson, like Walsh and Shapiro and Kirk, we get punished for it, or they try to punish. Now maybe Kimmel will be able to come back on air, and he shouldn't have to apologize because he didn't say anything illegal. Do I have to, do I, if someone, makes a comment about this episode, you know, and they're offended by it potentially, I don't know. I'm just making a point. And and if who are on the far right, have any discourse about it, well, you have your opinion, but I'm not going to apologize. I mean, do I have when I do a podcast or anything like that, do I have to be very careful in what I say now? And speak about how I see things? I'm not going to be talking about or using language that is offensive, because I'm not. People on the far right, you can't, you can't have it. You can't have it your way. This is not a one-way street. People who are discriminatory, and they're not, and they're not, you know they're not afraid to be that way. They'll come right out in public. Anti-Semitism, they say we can't, somehow we can't be that. I don't think that, people like myself who believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and speaking freely like that, I mean, what are you gonna like? I mean, what are you gonna name me? You're gonna call me a far left radical? Call it what they can call it what they want. But you have to, I guess, when we're talking about certain things, and see, they don't have to be careful on what they say. They don't have to. But when we like I say, when we turn around and call them out, well, we're the bad people. But who gets, like I said, who gets punished? We allow these speakers to come out in public. We allow to. They have the right to come out and speak. But being discriminating, against race, color, religion, the LGBTQ, they are allowed to go out there and be discriminative. They're allowed to do that. Even you know, like I say, other people's religion and everything else. When they have this shared strategy, weaponize free speech, reject accountability, claim victimhood. Sarcastic professional platform. Jordan Peterson, tenured professor, clinical psychologist. Amy Ham, registered nurse, educator. Ideologically claims Jordan Peterson, compelled speech in DEI anti-trans laws. Amy Ham, anti-trans rhetoric, anti-DEI social media posts. Public messaging, Jordan Peterson, YouTube, podcast and books. Amy Ham, podcast, column, social media. The pushback, censorship, Marxism, authoritarianism. Censorship, cancel culture, illegal speech. Legal reality, Protected speech, but not immune from criticism. Protected speech, but subject to professional standards. Well, Jordan Peterson too is subject. He's subject to professional standards. He feels that uh, the LGBTQ and their what do you, it's had to do with their identity, how you want to be identified, how you want to be identified. And the government was putting together legislation which Jordan Peterson was against, and he called it compelled speech. But it's not what Jordan Peterson got in trouble for. Being a clinical psychologist, teaching it and in practice, but it's what he did online, the shaming that he did of individuals. But he claimed it wasn't under the professionalism that he was doing as a private citizen. And to him, that made it okay. He was ordered to take sensitive training. He challenged it in court and lost. I mean, think about that for a second. He still held his license, his medical license, but he wasn't saying it under that license. He was saying it under a private citizen. Think about that for a second. So if he did say it and announce that he's saying it under his profession, he knows he'd get in trouble for it. But then saying it, oh no, I'm a private citizen. Does that even make any sense? It's okay to say it as a private citizen, and the shaming that he did. He thinks that's okay. Well, this is what happens, right? Amy Ham, she was fined, $94,000, but she did it under under her profession as a nurse. I don't think Peterson was fined, but he had to take this course. He was ordered to take this course. So there was some some sort of penalty for him. And Amy Ham, her penalty was a $94,000 fine. The American rights flip on cancel culture. With Trump's FCC pressured ABC to suspend Kimmel, and mega lawmakers demand tech platforms censor critics of Kirk. Well, you're going to censor critics of anybody. Okay, so Ben Shapiro and Amy Ham and Jordan Peterson, Matt Walsh. critics of those individuals. I mean, now, they come out and we speak out against it and stuff like that. Are we going to be censored for it? People like that, they think that DEI is extremists. It's not. Diversity, diversity, equity, inclusion. Think satire is going to trigger violence, and that satire is violence. Anti-fascism. They think that um, it's terrorism. It's not. It's crazy. It's And the other question is too is that people who hold higher positions, such as a nurse, a doctor, a politician, um, uh, psychologist, or whatever, you know should they be held to that higher standard? Does it give them a green light? In Jordan Peterson's instance, give it him a green light to shame people? Should it give him a green light to shame people? Absolutely not. Neither under private citizenship. Neither doesn't give you a green light to shame people. And all this rhetoric and bullshit, coming out of the Trump's orbital circle and his rhetoric. And when we call them out, oh, no, 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 you can't. Like I said, you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. They're going to come after you. They're going to try to censor you. Because Donald Trump says so. Authoritarianism. People like they don't like to be. People like Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson and Matt Walsh and others. They don't like it when you criticize them. They like it. They challenge you like you don't know anything. They really do. Have you ever watched any of their debates? They're to them they're right about everything. You can challenge them, you can debate them all you want. You're not going to change their minds. You can feel good about challenging them. You took that step, you took that opportunity, but they're going to try to belittle you. They're going to tell you that you absolutely don't know what you're talking about. That they're right and you're wrong. It doesn't matter on whatever topic they choose to have a debate about. They have all the answers. You don't. And they don't like to be criticized. And to me, that's just too bad. I'm going to criticize you. And I'm not going to, I'm going to criticize you. I'm, I'm not going to, start, using, foul language and start yelling at you. No, I'm going to criticize you in a meaningful way. As polite as Canadians are. Everybody thinks Canadians are so polite or so polite. Well, we are to a degree. The American ambassador to Canada, Pete Hextra, I think his name is, came over here the other day into Canada, and he can't understand why Canadians are boycotting the United States and using this elbows up platform. And that'll be next segment that I'll talk about, and I'll explain to you why Canada has taken the stance that it has, and using that platform of elbows up. It's a hockey term, you know, and try to understand why this troubles him. And to make the message loud and clear of why we're boycotting the United States. I will do that segment because I don't like when I don't have to go to work until tomorrow evening. So it's kind of like a 3-day weekend for me every week. And I try to put a couple shows together a week. I if I had the time to be out here every single day, I mean, sure, I'd do it every single day, but I can't. And if obviously you can't be out here every single day neither. You have a life to live, you have things to do. Same with myself. I have a life to live, I have things to do. Getting out a couple shows, I mean, because when I do the show, and I mean, I do my homework, right? I really do. And it might take me a couple days, you know, to get it the way that I want it, and to get that message out the way I want that message to be heard. So we'll talk about this, why Canadians are up in arms and elbows up, and why he's upset about it. Why Pete Hestra is upset about it. The American ambassador to Canada. So I like to, so because I don't have to work until tomorrow evening, I can do a 9 o'clock show tomorrow morning, and I know you're probably off to work, but I mean that's okay too, and that's great. But at least that episode be up there for you to listen to, and you can like and comment, um, share it with your friends, your family, your coworkers. Even this episode. You know, but I want to thank you for joining me. It's a pleasure to have you out here listening in. And I say this from time to time. You know, you the listeners is what makes a podcast. You come out to listen to a podcast because, without you, there wouldn't be a podcast. And, thanks for listening to mine. So until the next time, enjoy the rest of your weekend. There's going to be just fantastic weather today here in southern Ontario, Canada. I think the temperature is going to be, I mean, for the first day of fall, I think it's going to be, mid 80s today. But then we're going to cool down throughout the week as the week progresses. But get out there and enjoy the weather. Enjoy your activities or whatever activities you partake in, and go and enjoy them, and go enjoy your family, and have fun. So take care, everybody, and thank you for listening. This is North Affair Conversations Without Barriers. I'm your host, Doug, from Ontario, Canada. Thank you.